guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you have ever wanted to either have a TEDx talk or if you've ever wanted to speak and become a professional speaker, this episode is for you. My brother Kevin is probably, like I told him earlier, one of my top 3 favorite speakers of all time. And I'm talking all time. He's a speaker. He's a coach. He's a Swiss Army knife of positivity. Guys, you're going to enjoy this episode and stay till the end. We're going to give you 3 things that you can do today to help get you stage ready. Kevin, my brother, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here, Richard, and thank you for that laudatory introduction.
And I mean it. I listen to a lot of TEDx talks. I listen to a lot of speakers, and you're one of my favorite speakers. I can listen to you just read the encyclopedia to me. You have that kind of laid back, kind of voice that just draws me in, and that's why I say you're one of my favorite speakers of all time. So first question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
I give this a lot of thought because I teach at the university and most of my students are under 25, but I also have over the years been a mentor and a coach for many, many people, most of them friends, because of my experiences, both in the military as well as in the business world. And one of the things that I share with people is that you have to understand what your resiliency stack is. In other words, what is your capacity for handling adverse events that may come up in your life? And that's when resiliency really comes into play. Now, the younger you are, because of time on earth, the shorter that stack is. Hopefully what happens as you're experiencing things across the lifetime, your stack gets bigger. Now, that is not to say that your resiliency or your ability to handle an adverse event or something that comes up in your life, that you should go that alone. And many people, unfortunately, isolate themselves. And that's a mistake. In other words, if you know someone that you can go to when you're having an event or you have a big decision to make, in order to prove that resiliency, you need to borrow theirs. And that should be our first move. I know when I've been faced with situations that I was unfamiliar with in my own life, I've had mentors and people that I could go to that had a larger resiliency stack than I had. I went to them, they gave me their advice, I followed it. And it's not to say that everything was unicorns and rainbows, but I did find my way out of the situation very successfully, more times than not, based on not isolating myself, but using my stack of resiliency and then borrowing other people's through mentorship and consultation.
Now, did your military experience, did that help you learn how to speak? Because I know once I became a non-commissioned officer, I took a couple courses in speaking because now I had to stand up in front of the troops, give warning orders, being able to talk in front of colonels, commanders. So did that help you in your speaking to teach you how to speak?
Immeasurably, and here's the reason why. So the first skill that someone has to have when they want to become a proficient or competent public speaker is that they have to be somewhat comfortable. We can always tell when we look at a speaker and we recognize that they're very uncomfortable. And instead of listening to what they say, we start worrying about them. And we kind of tune them out, and it becomes very uncomfortable for the audience to watch somebody be very uncomfortable. And being comfortable is a skill. Most people do not realize this. There are techniques that you can use to be more comfortable in front of the room, whether you're speaking to 5 people, let's say your weekly office meeting where you stand up to give your readout on what you've accomplished, or your boss asks you to speak at a conference in front of 300 people. Those 2 things really aren't different. It's how we interpret them in our minds. And most people do not know how to interpret what's happening to them when they're in front of the room. and this causes a high level of anxiety. So when I was in speech class in college, I completely failed. They had to come up and walk me off the stage because I froze. And I did not speak in front of an audience again for 8 more years, but it was in the military. And the next time I got up to speak, I was perfectly comfortable. And you know what changed? How I thought about the opportunity. I stopped thinking about Kevin and I started thinking about my audience. And this is the second technique that we need to understand about public speaking. It's not about me, it's about the audience. And if we shift our thinking from worrying about ourselves and start worrying about our audience and making sure that what we delivers the promise that we've made for them to actually come into the room and listen to us. We want 80% of the people, and that's usually about the best you can expect. I don't care how good you are. We want 80% of the people to stand up when we're finished talking and walk out with the message. 10% never listen to you, and that's something you need to understand. The other 10% kind of faded in and out depending on what's called the elaboration likelihood model. In other words, how they perceive you as a speaker, and something called the narrative paradigm. I'm not going to get into that real deep, but you understand why 20% of the people do not walk out with your message, or they don't walk out with most of it. And it's just the nature of audiences. And then since then, I've been a public information officer. I've been a spokesman for IBM, multi-million-dollar, $100 million projects. And I was always chosen to speak to our congressional groups that came to our unit to learn what we do a little bit more deeply. And then, of course, I've been training public speaking for 5-6 years now. And it's the same thing I do at the university.
But as you're talking, I'm just thinking, like when I go give a speech, I usually fly in the day before. I get there hours early. I meet people in the audience and I talk to people. I shake hands, get to know their first names. So when I get up on stage, I'm comfortable because I've already talked to people in the audience, and it kind of it makes it more real, I should say. So, what are some of the things that you see the people that make big mistakes, especially when they're first starting out in public speaking?
Well, I think that they worry about themselves. So that, let's say they get the assignment from the boss to speak at a conference. And let's say they have a month to get ready. Number one, never memorize your speech. In training over 6,000 people, many of them had shared with me that they memorized their speech. And the first time they missed a sentence or missed a transition, they fell apart. I always recommend that you just have a bulleted list of the 3 to 5 main topics with some subtopics underneath that you can reference. The second thing that people do when they're inexperienced is they read their slides to the audience. They literally turn their back on their audience and read the slides. No slide should ever have more than 35 words. I prefer 10 or less, and I use visuals. And the reason being is because the brain processes visuals 60,000 times faster than words. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
60,000 times faster. It's absolutely amazing. The second thing that people do not do, they do not know how to command the audience. And what do I mean by that? Some people think that command the room means that how you look and how you act and all these kinds of things. No, it means that you give the audience a command. It's 1 o'clock. You probably had some carbohydrates for lunch. Why don't we stand up and stretch for a moment to get the blood flowing again before I really get started? So that's a command that you can give the audience. Another command that you can give the audience to begin to have them visualize your talk instead of just hearing the words is tell them to imagine something. Give them a word picture. Give them a word picture. So, for example, I did this to my class the other day. I said, y'all see that 747 over there? And 100% of my 28 students looked over there. Now, some of them confessed, I don't know what a 747 looks like, but I did see an airplane. And it wasn't even germane to what I was talking about, but I was making a point. because I was teaching them to command the room. I said, this is how you command the room. You tell the room to do something. You tell the folks to do something. Imagine this. And then the third mistake that people make when they're starting out, they tell no stories. They tell no stories. You have to marry the data with a story. And people who are people who are in the really, I call them intellectual pursuits, accountants, IT folks, things of this nature, not to blame them, but they go into those, it's historically and even scholarly research has done that a lot of people who do not want to speak, Richard, who do not want to speak up, never want to be on the stage, they shunt their careers into being the person that sits in a cube and never says anything to anybody. And it's typically IT people, accounting people that are in careers that they think don't require, but that's changing. Nobody can hide anymore. This skill is needed by every single career that you could go into. And let's say you're an entrepreneur and you're a plumber or an electrician or something like that. Well, in order to compete, you have to be able, like we talked about earlier, maybe to make some promotional videos and put them on YouTube. By the way, that's how I hired my person to clean my chimney. They had a fantastic, the person that owns the chimney company, he's very good on video, and he did a nice video and talked, and he wasn't the cheapest option out there either. I just liked him because of how well he came across on the video, and I felt like I could trust him.
And I love that, that people buy from people they know, like, and trust.
That's correct.
And I think the more you see somebody speak, that's why people buy from commercials. Because, if you see a spokesperson long enough, you're probably going to start liking the spokesperson, maybe following them on their social media and finding more about them. And then you're going to buy the product because now like, and trust the spokesperson.
Yeah.
And something else you said that I really love is, I'm a Christian. I'm a born again Christian. I believe in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And he told nothing but parables. He told nothing but stories. And it changed the world. And I believe, like you said, facts will tell, but stories will sell. So we need to really get better at storytelling, right?
Yeah, I teach my clients the 5 different types of storytelling that they can use, and it really helps. So they're as short as a vignette and as long as a case study. But you have to marry those stories to the data or the information that you're trying to convey. And just like you said, Jesus, he was marrying the concepts of the kingdom to the parables that he was telling. Not everybody understood them, but he was trying to help them to understand where he was coming from, because we can't envision what it's like there.
Yeah.
There's nothing on earth that even compares, if you read the Bible, that compares to what that's supposed to be like. And words don't do it justice.
Yeah. So now I hear, because as soon as I've read a lot of books on speaking, TEDx speaking, and I hear you need to join a Toastmasters club. You need to join this. You need to join that. And for me, I find that coming from the world of fitness, that the more reps you put in, the stronger you're going to get. And I believe that the more you speak, the better you're going to get at it, because you're putting in the reps. So what are your thoughts? Does somebody automatically just join a Toastmasters club, or how do they start if they want to be a speaker?
Well, reps are good if you're repping the right thing. I could go to the gym and want to increase my strength over the next 6 months by 20%. But if I don't learn the proper technique to lift those barbells and do chest press and things of that nature, then I'm liable to hurt myself. Something I heard a long time ago from Yakov Smirnoff, the Russian comedian, and I don't even know if he's still doing his thing, but he said when he came to America, He watched television for 3 months to try to learn how to speak English. He said then he realized he was watching the Spanish channel.
Yeah.
So
Telemundo.
yeah, what am I saying there, Richard? We can practice, but if we're practice, it's like golf. I can watch somebody, I can go to the golf range and a golfing instructor who may or may not know what they're doing may tell me I'm supposed to strike the ball a certain way with the 7-iron. But if they don't really know what they're talking about, then I'm striking the ball with the 7-iron the wrong way, and I am fundamentally training my brain to hit the ball that way. And so I'm learning the wrong thing. I know a lot of people who have gone to Toastmasters and thinking that they're going to become a better public speaker. And here's what Toastmasters typically does for you. And I think you're hitting upon it. It does help people be more comfortable. But in the 6,000 professionals that I've trained, Richard, I've had several people come in and I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why my company sent me to this training, to this workshop. But after they watched their first video, they realized why they were sent. And what I'll find out as I go around the room at the beginning of day one of this workshop is that, well, I'm comfortable. So I'm a great public speaker. No, that's just the first technique. That's the first skill that you need to have somewhat. You have to be somewhat comfortable to come across well. But that does not make you a great public speaker. And that's what Toastmasters, in my experience, focuses on. They focus on the reps, like you talked about, but that doesn't mean that you become a great public speaker. There's 6 other things that you need to be doing on some level to be thought of as somebody who's engaging, can persuade, can convince, the other things that we're trying to accomplish during a talk. And if you don't know those, then, and if you're taking coaching from someone who's not good themselves, then you're going to emulate what they're doing. And so you're hitting the ball wrong with the 7-iron. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. And something I see a lot of, especially new speakers, is I know that I speak my way. I can't speak the way Gary Vaynerchuk speaks. I can't speak the way Ed Milet or Tony Robbins speak. So I have to learn my own way of speaking, but doing it very well. And I know imitation is, the flattery, but there's only one Gary V, and there can only be one Gary V. But a lot of people are just like, oh, if Gary can do it, I'm just going to say a bunch of cuss words and I'm going to be a great speaker. And it's like, that's not the way it works. So how do you come up with your own? Because you have the kind of voice that I wish I could remember the pastor. He just passed away. And I could just listen to him for hours and hours because it's very peaceful and it's not monotone to where sometimes you get a speaker and they're just one way and you're like, oh my God, will this ever end? So how does a person find their own voice while learning to become a good speaker?
Well, I think that people have the misconception that public speaking is a different way of talking, and it isn't. What I teach my clients is that public speaking, whether I'm standing up or sitting at the conference table, whatever the situation, I have to be me. I have to be the authentic me. The speech I just gave in Colorado, I just had a conversation with the folks that were in the audience. And that's really what public speaking is. It's just a different form of a conversation. Most people are taught in speech class and even Toastmasters that you're speaking to 500 people or 300 people or 5 people. That's not true. You're speaking to one person at a time. Just like you and I are having a conversation, this is how I speak from the stage. I don't change how I speak from the stage. I may be a little bit more energetic, and you need to be because and you get energy from the audience if you play it right. But public speaking is just a series of one-to-one conversations. So I may give, let's say there's 10 people here. I may give a sentence or an idea here to person over here on the right. Then I pause, I breathe, because you need air to speak. I breathe, plus it oxygenates the brain. I think what? Only the next sentence, only the next idea. Most people who have fear of public speaking or think they're going to bomb, they're trying to think 5 sentences ahead because they are scared to death they're going to forget what they say next. And I have a cure for that too. But anyway, I cover all the bases in my training because I don't want people, the main fears that people have, the top 2 are I'm being judged, and guess what? You are. So get over it, because they're judging you, but they're not judging you. Well, do I like Richard or do I like Kevin or whoever? No, they're judging whether or not they should give you their time to listen. That's the judgment piece. It's not you as a person. It's whether or not they should listen to you. That's what they're judging. And they do it within the first 8 to 22 seconds because that's our attention span. So if I don't grab their attention within the first 8 to 22 seconds, then I'm probably not going to get them back. So I breathe, I think the next sentence, see the next person, speak to them. We are not actors. We do not do aesthetic distance. We don't pick a spot on top of their head and not see them. We have to see the audience, not just look at them, but see them and see them as an individual. And people tell me initially, oh, well, everybody else will feel left out. No, it's exactly the opposite. People feel left out when you scan the audience, because that just turns you into a lighthouse. You don't look out there and see 500 people. You pick an individual to speak to in a conversational tone, of course, using voice modulation, some of the stuff that you've already talked about. But this is how you do it. And anybody, this is another technique to overcome fear, anybody can talk to one person at a time. I always tell my students, just have a conversation like you're sitting at Starbucks having a coffee with a friend. It's just that you have 500 friends in the audience. Speak to them one at a time.
And I love that. Now, I have a couple friends that are TEDx speakers. Sean Kanan just did his. Sean Douglas is a 3-time TEDx speaker. And when I ask them for advice, a lot of times they're like, well, the audience don't really care what you have to say. They want to know what's in it for them.
That's exactly
right. Instead of you just trying to sell your wares like a snake oil salesman, if you don't hit that emotional point, you're never gonna. They don't care what you have to say unless there's something in it for them. So how important is that, and how do you change your mindset into thinking, okay, it's all about them, it's not about me?
Yeah, so there's a 7-step process in creating your content. I'm not going to go into all the steps. I'll give you the first 2. Initially, when we think of a talk, Richard, we think, what is the X? In other words, what do I want to accomplish? We have not, at that point, taken into consideration our audience. The second thing I need to do is to do research on my audience. What do they need from me? What's in it for them? WIIFM radio, right? What's in it for me? Not me as the speaker, but me as the audience. Because if I'm not giving them what they need, what they came for, they're going to tune me out or maybe get up and walk out of my presentation. Now, the third thing you need to do based on that, you may need to refine your X, or in other words, the goal of your talk, because now you have more information about your audience. And people go, well, how do I find out about my audience? Well, Google, call the company you're going to speak at, ask the person who's hiring you to speak, or you're coming in to do a pro bono speech, perhaps at a nonprofit. Ask them, what does your audience need from me? And then tailor your message. I'm not saying change your signature speech, but tailor that signature speech, that signature talk, which I have 2, to the audience at hand. And when you do that, you'll capture them a lot quicker and a lot faster, because they're like, oh, he or she is speaking to me. They know what I need. Wow, that's unique.
We have a question from the audience. Craig asks, what is a TEDx speech and why are they so popular?
Sure. I'm actually doing research on that right now. And TEDs are part of my research project that I'm finishing up my Ph.D. on. And that is whether it's a TEDx or a TED, their whole moniker is ideas that are worth spreading. And so if you have a unique idea or a unique passion that you believe belongs on the TED stage or a TEDx stage, then my recommendation is just do a Google search for the TEDx or the TED playbook. They actually tell you how to prepare very in depth, how to prepare for a TEDx. I use that playbook anytime I'm teaching someone who aspires to the TEDx or the TED stage in my coaching. And but then I give them the practical steps of how to execute that guidebook. That's how you do it. TED is very clear about what they want you to do. 18 minutes, it has to be informative. They want you to tell some stories. There's different things within that guidebook, and it's downloadable on the internet. But like I said, you can't, and you mentioned books before, books on public speaking. You can't learn public speaking from a book. I could read Tony Robbins' 15 reasons why you should be a public speaker, and here's how, and I won't be any better as a public speaker. Because you don't have the structures in your brain from a neuroscientific perspective. You don't have them built. You mentioned before, if we're practicing the right things, Richard, then over time, the reason we do get more comfortable and we do become more competent is because of neuroplasticity. Neuroscience is my hobby. So neuroscientifically, our brain is building new structures and the fear structures are dying, or the incompetent structures are dying, and the competent structures are being built in our brain through the repetition of practice. But you got to practice the right thing.
And something that I love that you do, and I've noticed it since we've been talking. Now, I lost 60% of my vision, so my hearing's got better. Not according to my wife, but that's a whole different story.
We all have that issue.
But you've said my name. You said my name 7 times so far. And a lot of people, when they're talking one-on-one to a person, or even in a smaller group, they forget to use a person's name. Yes. And that's the person's favorite thing to hear is their name. So how important is that, especially in small settings or even on one-on-one, is to use that person's name as you're speaking conversationally, but not just saying, "Hey, Kevin, remember Kevin? Hey, Kevin, Kevin."
Well, let me put it in the context of my teaching at the university. And I think this applies across the board. The first thing that I try to do with my students is learn their names. And I've had several of them over the course of my teaching career there tell me, no other professors really try to learn my name. They just go, yes. If I raise my hand, they don't say, "Oh, hi, Bridget," or "Bridget, go ahead. What do you have?" Or "Tony, what's your question?" Or "Micah, what do you have to add?" I'm able to call the name of every single one of my students. And I know where they're from. And the reason being is because I recognize, as you just said, when people know that you know their names, they feel seen. It is so important, no matter what we're doing, whether we're public speaking or just being a human being, to see the other person. But we're so in our heads now through technology and so forth. It's very difficult. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to look beyond ourselves to see the other person. I practice this when I shop. If someone has a name tag on and they bag my groceries or they wait on me at the table, whatever the situation, I make it a point to call them by their name. I'll tell you a story. My wife and I, we were very fortunate. We saved up for a long time. We wanted to go to Ireland, and we had this 10-year plan. We found out in Ireland, if you go to a gas station, they have really good food. I mean, really good food. It's like walking into a restaurant. So every day at lunch, we just went to a gas station to get our lunch instead of going to a sit-down pub or whatever, because the food was so good. Well, we went to this one gas station that actually was across the street from the hotel we were staying at. we went in there to get lunch, and we walk up to the counter. The young lady that was waiting on us, who was very nice, I said, "Excuse me, ma'am." I said, "Well, what is your name?" She goes, "What?" I said, "What's your first name? Why do you want to know?" I've never had that reaction before. I said, "Well, because when people provide me with good service, I like to thank them by name." Well, she goes, "Well, my name's Maria." I said, "Has nobody ever asked you what your name is?" She didn't have a name tag on. She goes, "I've been here 3 years. You're the first person who actually cared what my name was." My wife and I, we almost fell out. I mean, I couldn't believe it. 3 years you're in a job and nobody ever called you by name or even wanted to know what your name was. That was amazing to me. Yeah. But she thought I was up to something. She thought I was up to something nefarious, because why do you want to know my name? I'm like, I just want to thank you by name. That's all I'm interested in.
But I think that makes that there's a big difference when you do stuff like that. Like there's a reason why the lines for Chick-fil-A are 5, 10, 15 cars deep. There's a reason why I love USAA, because when I call, they're like, "Sergeant Kaufman, how can I help you?" Or like I
Mhm.
said, when I go to Chick-fil-A, "Can I have your name?" And when my order's ready, "Richard, here's your order. Have a beautiful day." It
Yeah.
makes a big difference in customer service when you're hearing those beautiful words, your name, right?
Yeah. It's absolutely critical to, yeah, we can want to be a better X, whatever X is, a better public speaker, a better employee, a better whatever. But if it's all about us, I think we lose opportunity. But we can't pursue this just because it's going to benefit us. Zig Ziglar, who was a motivational speaker, super salesman, loved people,
Yep.
he said this. He said, if you help, he said, this is the first thing you have to do. If you help enough people get what they want, you automatically get what you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. We, unfortunately, in our society, we're tending towards more self centeredness, the selfies and me, myself, and I, and all that kind of stuff. But the people who are giving, who give more than they get, I think they get more automatically. Number one, the satisfaction of making someone else's day is kind of nice.
And I can't agree. And I'm a big Zig Ziglar guy. I've probably listened to hundreds of hours of his tapes, and you kind of remind me of that. You kind of remind me of that guy, because he just has that smooth Southern draw that it just draws you in. So now, like I promised, this is a teaching podcast also. Um, if somebody was going to wanting to become a public speaker, what would be your top three pieces of advice that they could start learning today?
Well, number one, I think they need a mentor that knows what they're doing. It's very difficult to become a really good public speaker without the proper coaching. And I'm not saying that to sell you on my coaching. I'm just saying that it's kind of how I learned. I learned from other people, watching them and then them giving me opportunities and giving me some feedback when I was finished. The first class I ever taught for the Air Force, I had a captain and a major that, had me, that were mentoring me, and they said, "Hey, Mac, that was pretty good, but next time you might want to try this or that." And then I incorporated that, and I kept incorporating their suggestions, and they were very good in front of a room. They were great teachers. And so that's how I first learned how to speak publicly, was by teaching. And then that moved into speeches and presentations and uh, all that kind of stuff. So I think listening to people who know what they're doing and not listening to people that can't demonstrate what you want to be able to do. And I'm not saying be them. You got to be authentic and be yourself. The second is stop thinking about yourself. I love the author of the Chronicles of Narnia. He has this great saying. C.S. Lewis. He
Yep.
says, "It's not that we think less of ourselves; it's that we think of ourselves less." And I love that. And I tell my students that at the university, and they all know about the Chronicles of Narnia. They've all seen the movies, and so they can relate to that. In other words, stop thinking about yourself so much and start thinking about other people. And maybe the anxiety will go down a little bit because you're not all up in your head and worried about being judged or forgetting what you're going to say next and these things. And then I would say start small. That is, I've practiced in front of my family before. And they they gave me some pointers on how I was using my hands. And most people, well, I would say almost all people have no idea what they're doing with these when they speak. But I would say learning to match what's coming out of your mouth to the gestures you're making. And most people just flail about. But I would become very cognizant of what I'm doing with my hands and my arms when I speak. Most people never relax their arms. By the time they're in minute 4, 5, or 6 of a talk, and let's say it's going to be 15 minutes, they're exhausted because of the tension in their hands. And a lot of people make fists, but they're completely unaware. And I have an entire practice that I give people to become hyper aware of what you're doing with these so that you can plan. Everything I'm doing right now, by the way, Richard, I'm doing on purpose. This is not automatic. I'm doing exactly what I want to do with these because I've trained myself to know what I do with my hands to augment what I'm saying. So those 3 things.
I love it. I come from an Italian family. We use our hands all the time. So we're always, I mean, we're always speaking with our hands. So I get
Everybody does, but certain cultures use it more, as you're pointing out.
So what's going on? I know you just got back from speaking at an event in Colorado. So what's coming up and what's going on in Kevin's world?
Yeah. So in May, first week of May, a friend of mine also teaches public speaking, and we're talking about synergizing our offering together. He's a very popular public speaker as well, but we also train public speaking. So I'm going to his class to watch his methodology and sort of get schooled up on what he's doing, and then I'm going to share with him what I do, and it is quite different. And I want to see what the effect of his training is versus mine, which takes a little bit longer. And then I'm seeking some more paid and pro bono speaking opportunities right now. And I've been told by the association that I just spoke at that they want me to come back next year and have a more focused audience that we're seeking in order for it to have an even greater impact, the crisis management talk that I give these schools. So that's that. And then finishing up my Ph.D. this summer. I'll defend my dissertation probably in June or July, and looking for a full-time professorship after that, and then really focusing on the business aspects of public speaking and providing these workshops.
Now you also, like I mentioned earlier in the introduction, you're also a coach. So you also take on limited clients. So tell us about that. And if we want to get coached by you, how do we get into your ecosystem?
Yeah, it's very easy. Even on my LinkedIn, which let me give you my website is McIntyre, MCINTYRE speaks.com. And I've provided some very easy ways to get in touch with me there if you want coaching or if you want me to come and speak at your event. And then my LinkedIn, which also features this kind of thing, is.
I love your LinkedIn profile, by the way.
Oh, thanks. That cost a lot of money. Yeah, if you go to linkedin.com/Kevin C. McIntyre, that's my LinkedIn profile. Yeah. So back there.
Yep, and I'll be putting that in the liner notes also.
And on each one of those, my website is on my contact information as well as my cell number. So if you want to talk to me, and there's also a way to schedule a Zoom meeting with me as well on both the website as well as the LinkedIn profile. Yeah.
And I love it. And I also want to give a big shout out to Joseph. If it wasn't for Joseph, we wouldn't be talking today. So Joseph, thank you so much for making this so easy and seamless. So I just want to say thank you, brother. Now, that's normally the last question, but because of it's you, I got one more question. And because you're a man of faith.
Yes.
I can see it, I can hear it. So if somebody is struggling with their faith, what is something they can do in the next 24 hours to finally find some peace again?
Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. It's very simple. But a lot of times we think that God doesn't like us. We believe that he loves us, but we're not sure that he actually likes us. Well, I can assure you that if you have faith in Christ, he does like you a lot because, number one, he tracked you down at some point. But if you're not there yet and you feel the call, find someone that can share the gospel with you so that you can place your faith in him. There's no people look for peace in the bottle, the drugs, sex, all kind of stuff, and they never find it. The only peace you're ever going to find is in the arms of Jesus Christ. And you and I have found that. That's why we have the enthusiasm we have. That's the reason we have the balance in our lives that we have. It's the reason we're able to pursue things that make other people's lives better, hopefully. That's my advice. Come unto the Lord, let him give you the peace, rest in his arms, and be assured that he likes you, that he loves you, and that he left heaven to seek you out as a pearl of great price. Don't resist.
Amen. And as the way I end my show every day, guys, you know that when you wake up every morning, you have a choice. You could be a victim or you could be a victor.
Yep.
And if you listen to this show, you're no longer victims of your past, but you're victors of your present and your future. And like our swag says, I win in the end because of him. I love you guys. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. Kevin, my brother, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Hopefully we can build a generational relationship from today on.
Appreciate that, Richard.
Have an amazing day, and God bless you and your amazing family.
Thank you. You as well.